Today I want to walk you through a fully automated system I built for generating and managing LinkedIn posts. From an initial email request all the way to sending a polished post with AI-generated images ready to be published. The goal? Streamlining content creation using AI and automation. No manual copywriting, no image hunting, and no back and forth approvals over chat. Instead, everything runs through a smart workflow that pulls in context from a vector store, writes a compelling post using generative AI, and even produces custom cover images using self-hosted image generation API. And the best part, it's all triggered by a simple email. In this video, I'll show you how the workflow works end to end, what tools I used, and how decisions like approvals or revisions can be handled entirely through your inbox. So, that being said, let's jump in. Before we jump into each of the nodes, I want to mention a couple of important things. First is that I used Quadrant as a vector store. I have a Kubernetes cluster running at home and I had deployed Quadrant already. So this is why I chose this particular vector store here. Second is the image generation part. For the image generation, I used a self-hosted Flux models. I have GPU at my home cluster and I have this other workflow orchestrator that's specifically done for images and videos. And here I have the Flux model running, so it's capable of generating images using an API. And I'm not gonna go so much deep into how this whole thing works, but I have a cost-effective, cheaper, even I would say free option to generate images. This is why I decided to use this solution here. And lastly, I used OpenAI for the generative AI text models because OpenAI models are quite cheap lately and they integrate quite well with NA10. And that being said, before we check each of the nodes, let's first go to the image generation workflow, which is relatively simplistic compared to the other one that I want to show you. So I have it open here, and how it works is just by generating a random number, getting the prompt from the main workflow, and then creating a post request to the Flux API. This adds a new processing entry in the queue. So this is why you can see here this loop where I check the queue and I wait until the query is processed. And once the query is processed, I fetch the image name and then download the image from here and send it back to the main workflow. All of this here is contained in this block. So let's go to the beginning and see how the whole workflow runs. I have a Gmail trigger that waits for emails that are sent by my personal email. I have another automation email that's mainly used for the automation purposes, and the inbox that it has contains all of the prompts. Then whenever there is a new email that's unread from this email that contains post in its subject, the pipeline triggers. I mark the email as read, then I check if it was a reply or normal, or let's call it initial email. I do this by looking for RE in the subject line. So if there is no RE, this means that this is the initial email, and I return either false or true. Whenever we have first email, we go straight to the get initial prompt block, which basically extracts the text from this email and uses it as a prompt for the AI agent. If we have the other case where the email was a reply, we get the action. We just extract it by taking the first word from the email, which usually should be approve or deny. And then we check if it was approve or deny. Here I have a very simple if case. So everything that's not approved in the email, any other word, so to say, it's considered as denied. If we approve it, then nothing happens, the workflow finishes. If we decline or deny the initial post generation, then we run the workflow again. Here in my agent, I just pipe the prompt and I instruct the model to create a post using information from the vector store. The vector store is pre-populated with company-related information, and it's capable of returning anything that's relevant to the current post. Afterwards, after I generate the post, I split the workflow into branches. Those two branches do the same. Here I must note that there is a way to generalize this setup, but given the time constraint that I had, I decided for this simplistic way to do it. Basically what happens here is the image generation, and we generate 2 images in those 2 workflows. How this whole thing works is I have this OpenAI model block that takes the generated post data and then is instructed to create a image prompt based on the text data, which then is sent to the image generation workflow so that it creates the image, and whenever this is done, I just rename the images to cover 1 and cover 2. Main idea is that we have 2 images that we can merge then in this merge block and output the binary data here. This is needed so that we can then use the binary data as a single email attachment. You can see it here. Lastly, in this block that I just opened, what I do is sending the generated LinkedIn post, sending the previous history, so that if we retrigger the workflow, there's context for what was the initial prompt, what was already created, etc. And then, as mentioned, I also attach the generated images. So let me show you how this works in practice. I'm not gonna activate the workflow to make the whole procedure faster. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send an email, and I'm gonna manually trigger by clicking on execute workflow just to save some time. So let's now do this. I've already opened my email client. I have my automation email here. I'm just gonna write post in the subject and then type some kind of a prompt. I'm gonna do something quite experimental here. I forgot to mention that I have some Facebook information already imported into the vector store as company data. I use this as dummy data. And just to show you how the whole image generation and AI post generation works, I'm just gonna ask the AI to generate a post about Facebook and Scooby-Doo, which is quite funny and interesting, but let's see for this case how creative the AI can be. And I'm just gonna click on send. As you can see, I just received my email, and I can trigger the workflow so that the processing starts. I'm just gonna click on execute workflow. So we see that the email was found. We see that this is not a reply. So this is why this branch here is active. Then we get the prompt, we invoke the AI agent, and now we have to wait for the image generation to finish. You can see that the workflow finished executing, and I should receive an email with generated post in any moment. And the email is here. You can see that it's from automationpenkov@gmail.com. Here is the post, and then those are the 2 images. Quite nice images, I would say, Scooby-Doo and Facebook. So let's say that we are not happy with what was written here. Let's decline the generation and wait for a new one just to see how the whole thing works. So I'm just gonna click on reply, and I'm gonna write denied. I can see that there is a reply to the thread of emails, so I'm just gonna re-trigger the workflow and see what happens. So now after getting the email, we see that we go through the other path. We check if the action was approved, and as you can see, the action was denied. So we are seeing that the image generation will trigger again. The post was already renewed, and if we wait a little bit, we're gonna have a brand new post. So that's done. And now I have the initial email and also the new email after I denied the previous post. And if I decide to approve the email, we're going to see that nothing more happens, and we finalize the workflow with a good post. So the email is here. I can see approve. Let's re-trigger the workflow, and we're going to see that none of those 2 branches here is executed. We just finish at the true. So it means that the post was approved, and we're happy to post this new content on LinkedIn. And that's a wrap up on the automated LinkedIn post creation workflow. I hope you found this walkthrough insightful and maybe even sparked some ideas on how AI and automation can simplify your content creation process. If you have any questions, feedback, or want to dive deeper into any part of the setup, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to sharing more cool projects with you.